1 o'clock. So we've got 2 more versions after today. We've got 2 more tomorrow. And then that'll complete our AirVenture series, which we've done 5, 6, so 12 different things. So today, we've gone a little bit beyond just an airplane and a person. We've got an airplane engine company, but we've got a nice airplane that's running the same engine as a representative. So my name's Joe Waltz. I'm on the EAA Homebuilt Aircraft Council, and also from Conroe, Texas, Chapter 302. But there we go. My critical test. This will be your mic, and this one I'll hang on to mine. We're going to have to pass it back and forth there. So Jan and Alyssa Eggenfeller from, well, I'm going to let you tell us the name of your company and tell us where you're located, and then we'll continue from there.
Yeah, Jan and Alyssa Eggenfeller, like Joe was saying, and we're based out of Florida, a little airport called Massey Air Ranch. It's Edgewater, Florida, just a little bit south of Daytona Beach. And we settled there because it's kind of mid-Florida, it's beautiful, and we can leave the hangar door either closed or open and have a nice place to build our engines.
Okay, so we're going to go into in just a minute to find out about all those different engine variants. David Tillema on the end owns this beautiful, go ahead and introduce yourself, David. Tell them what kind of airplane you're flying, and go ahead and tell us the model number of Viking, and then Jan can expand on their product line.
Alrighty, my name's David Tillema. I'm from Friendswood, Texas, south of Houston. I'm flying the Zenith CH-750 Cruiser, affectionately known as Jumbo. She has the Viking 130 with the Duke variable in-flight propeller system, which is just quite amazing.
Okay, so that's kind of a neat intro. So let's get back to Jan and Alyssa. You guys pass it back and forth. I know, Alyssa, you're kind of the voice of the company, maybe. Jan knows a few things about it too. So whoever wants to answer the question, it really doesn't matter. And we're going to get to some Q&A a little bit later on. Hope you don't get too hot out there in the sun, but hang around for the Q&A. We're gonna talk up here for probably up to an hour. Depends on how it goes. So, Jan, let's expand a little bit more. You told us where the company is. Get into the product line that you have.
Well, our business is to convert car engines so they can fly in home-built airplanes. We tend to use mostly Honda engines. In fact, we use all Honda engines except one. We have a little Mitsubishi engine that we use, that we convert, and we do all the horsepowers. We do 90 horsepower, we do 130 horsepower, 150, and then we got our larger one, our turbocharged engine at 195. So those are the things we do as far as converting car engines to airplanes. And then, of course, most people that come to us and want to use our engine for their home-built airplane would ask us, well, you know, how do I mount this engine? What do I do with it? You know?
Well, that's exactly what I was going to ask you.
Well, yeah, so there's a lot more to it that we also specialize in. So we do the entire firewall forward package, and Alyssa does package several of those up every day or every week that go out to customers. So I'll have her talk a little bit to you about what is included and the importance of the customer service and making sure that builders aren't like just left there with having to run to Home Depot or order things from McMaster-Carr, or that, you know, the completeness of what we do to make it easy for the customer, I think is why we've become very successful at what we do.
Right. So, well, one more thing, Jan. Alyssa can answer it for us. 4 engine models, and basically the model number is the horsepower that you're getting out of it. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay. Now, those 2 top-end ones, I'll call them top-end, you got 185 horse and a 1...
We have a 195 horsepower
195.
is our largest engine.
And is it the same as the next one down, but just with a turbocharger?
No, in fact, it's not. They're actually all different models pulled from different cars. So where our 90 horsepower is a 1.2 liter Mitsubishi Mirage engine, and then we move up to the 130, that is a Honda 1.5 liter. It's the little fit car. And then from there, we do the 150 horsepower that comes out of the 1.8 liter HRV, and the turbocharger that is on our big 195 turbo is from the car itself. So we're not adding on a turbocharger on for it.
That's the way it comes off the assembly line for the cars themselves. Which models do we have here?
The one to your right there is our 195 turbo, and on the opposite side you'll actually see the turbocharger.
Okay.
And in front of us here is the 130 horsepower engine.
Excellent. So, and they're in the, well, pretty much like what you would, is this how it's going to show up when I order it?
Yeah, exactly. So our engine and our pricing that we give for our engine is basically ready to run. So we run them before they leave,
Okay.
and they have the computer on it, the aviation grade wiring harness, all of that is as it is. And then depending on what airplane you have, we specialize in making that firewall forward as complete as possible for you, and that all goes in the box. And in
Does
2
that
weeks-
include mounts?
Oh
Firewall
yeah,
forward?
so for over 40 different aircraft in the experimental realm, we have the engine mount, the cowling, the pins that go in the cowling, your fuel system, your radiator, your cooling system, your propeller, your spinner, different options of propeller from variable pitch to constant speed to ground adjustable. So you are going to have every little piece that you need and above and beyond what's typically offered. Even the batteries and contactors and coolant and the tools that do it, and even in something such as the Zenith, we offer things above and beyond engines for the aircraft itself.
So they're all water-cooled engines?
They are all liquid cooled. Yeah,
Liquid, okay.
Yep, we use a NPG waterless coolant in our setup, which means obviously under the cowling you're having a lot lower temperatures compared to your standard air-cooled engine.
Yeah, so maybe Jan is the best to ask you, why do I want to do an auto engine? It seems to me, on the outside, it's probably because prices are going to be a whole lot less.
Well, it used to be that way. We used to be like the alternative engine place. If you didn't have any money, or you were scrounging and you were like wanted to get your own core and put some pieces on and maybe bolt a drive unit on there and all that. But that has all changed. We're no longer an alternative engine of any. We're actually become a primary engine company for home-built experimental aircraft. Clear example, of course, is the Zenith aircraft, which we supply 75-80% of the engines that are being used by the builders that complete those airplanes. So I think the last 10 years and accelerating every year, we have shown that these engines work, that they're modern, that they are more compatible with what you're used to when you buy a car, which is that they start instantly, they run smooth, you get the benefit of mass-produced engines, so you get a huge amount of technology and in a package that doesn't cost anything. And of course, that's only because they come from something like a Honda Accord or something. Honda has made more cars, or they're making more engines right now today when we sit here than Lycoming and Continental and UL and Runtex and all those combined have made in their entire career making aircraft engines.
So let's pass it down to Dave for a second. Jan just said that, what did you say, 85% of the Zenith people are choosing your engine?
Somewhere around there.
Okay, so there's other engines on Zenith. Why did you decide to put this engine on your aircraft?
Well, my mission was to have a plane that I could fly, not the one that I had to constantly work on. Super reliability was paramount because I wanted to travel to the lower 48 states. So this was not the first engine in jumbo. The first engine was very unreliable, nothing but a maintenance nightmare. I removed that engine 95 hours, and then during that time I already knew it was problematic, so I had stayed in touch with Viking, and when it bit the ghost, I called them up. I was like, how quick can you get me back in the air? Within 2 weeks I was back in the air.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I've been back in the air pretty much every day since.
So you had to change everything out, right?
Yeah, we did a retrofit. They shipped the engine and everything over. I pulled my previous engine off. They showed up. They do they'll travel to install your engine for you if you want. And I wanted to be back in the air as quick as possible without any issues. It took them 3 days. We both worked on it. It took 3 days to get back in the air, and Yeah, it's been a dream since.
I understand why you've got him at your booth now. I mean, that's a great sales point because most people decide on the engine when they're building and they stick with it. That's because you spend so much money on it.
Well, let me
So
say
when
this
you
one-
did a swap out, that's incredible getting it going that fast.
Yeah, and it's this September will be 3 years that Jumbo's been in the air. This engine has 700 hours on it. The plane has 800 hours in less than 3 years.
Wow, that's a lot of flying. We're going to get to another neat story about Dave. If you notice on the side of his airplane, he's got a little map of the United States. So you didn't exactly come in a straight line to get here, did you?
No, I've got problems with navigation apparently.
Yeah. So okay. Wrong way, Dave.
Yeah.
How many states did you have to stop in before you found Oshkosh?
Well, I hit all 48, and I finally, actually, I flew over Wisconsin prior to finishing, but I left Wisconsin for last. So
There you
we
go.
We did all 48, and we did it in record time. The record was 16 days, 12 hours, something, with 2 pilots. We did it in 10 days, 1 hour and odd minutes, solo.
Wow. Well, here's that's plays tribute to the engine, the reliability of the engine.
Absolutely.
Because how many hours of flying was that?
That was 60 point some
60.
hours in the air, and there was another 20, and I was like 20 hours actually, so it was 80 hours total. But when you're touching and
Sure.
constantly, there was a lot of ground time. So
That brings to mind, or a question in my mind then is, how often do you do an oil change?
well,
I don't change oil in my car very often.
Yeah, the gearbox is every 25 hours, but it's only 8 ounces, so that was easy. No issues there.
Okay, so the gearbox is a separate oil system from the engine. We'll get into those details in a little bit.
Okay, the engine itself is recommended around 55 hours, but I am kind of the unofficial test destroying pilot. So my goal is to see if I can make this thing break. So I push it, and I've gone as high as 88 hours with oil samples, and it still does good.
Well, one of the big problems with a typical aviation engine is you build up all that sludge in the oil because you're burning fuel that has lead in it. So what kind of gas did you burn around the 48 states?
This entire challenge was done only on auto fuel. 91, 93 octane, no lead at all.
So that's another benefit, I guess, of an automotive engine. Jan is videotaping this, and we just videotaped a header. So as Jan said, the cost point has kind of come up, but it's because we're working on the reliability of the engine. But actually, operationally, that's going to reduce your cost quite a bit. I mean, car gas it's higher than it was a year ago, I've heard. But it is a whole lot less than aviation gas.
It is, and with that, I was wanting to do it from the very get-go, and then last year it would have cost half as much as this year.
Sure.
But it's still cheaper to do auto fuel, low gas versus 100 low lead. So it's just remarkable.
So from the operator standpoint, I'm dealing with that. I've got spark plugs. How often do we change those out? I'm trying to think of what I have to do on my aircraft engine and how much maybe easier it is with this engine.
Well, I've got 700 hours on my engine, same as that one. And I tinker, and every year you do your conditional inspection. So I'll pull the plugs out. And throughout my testing with leaded fuels and stuff, I wanted to get my compression back. So I changed my plugs out. They didn't need to, but I did. And I changed the serpentine belt out. Other than that, it's oil.
Okay, so you do burn leaded gas once in a while. It can go either way?
Only as an absolute necessity, but it will burn it. But then I add a additive called Declan that is a lead scavenger that offsets the lead buildup.
Okay, so I was going to ask you on how does the lead affect the valve system and any kind of potential buildup?
Well, you want to stay away from leaded fuel if you can.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just like any like Rotex says the same thing, UL says
Yeah.
the same thing, Jabra says the same thing. I mean, it's not good stuff for any engine, but you put the additive in when you can't get aviation fuel. But one thing I was just listening to, so So how much oil, because you kind of asked it, but he didn't answer it. How much oil did you use on this
Okay, yeah.
48-hour thing? And one more thing, do you think that you could have gone 700 hours without ever changing the spark plugs if you had used car gas the whole time?
Sounds like a leading question, so let's hear it from the operator's standpoint.
Okay, well, I'll answer the spark plug thing first. If I didn't use under low lead, I would never have had to touch any part of the engine other than oil changes. The oil that I use under
That's going to help the plugs, the life of the plugs is the
Yes.
no lead, yeah.
correct. So and it also helps your compression not using lead. So we ended up going 80 point out whatever hours on this one, but I topped it off at 4 quarts when I left Friendswood. I didn't add any oil the entire trip. I didn't have any oil slicks underneath my plane like some engines do. And when I had to refuel it, or when I switched the oil out here, I was a little over a quart low. So, but which was normal for a long flight. I mean,
Yeah,
I would
that's-
that's remarkable.
That's not bad. Yeah, it's great from an operator standpoint. So you need reliability. For you hitting all these states, you're out by yourself. Sounds like that's what you got out of it. Okay, Jan, Alyssa, I want to ask you, so you buy the engine from, I'm not sure where your suppliers are, but it's an automotive engine. You have to add a few things to it, right?
Yeah,
And do you build them or outsource? How's that process work?
we build them all in-house. The engines themselves, we don't mess with the internals of the Honda engine whatsoever. We've never found a need to, and we've never had internal engine issues at all. So we're not going to mess with Honda kind of spent their time doing.
Sure.
And then we add on, obviously, our gearbox and everything that involves.
Is that made in-house, the gearbox?
Yes, it is. The
Okay.
machining itself is housed out. It's our design, but they're
Okay.
assembled in-house, yes.
So it's just a bolt-on, and I can understand now why it's got its own independent oil system, separate from the engine, because like you said, you don't want to mess with the engine. It's a proven design. Alternator is that similar to what comes on the car?
That's actually, we don't need the big alternator that comes on the car. So we have a 40 amp Nippon Denso alternator on there. And
Okay.
on the back, we obviously have mounting hardware. And there's little nuances throughout. Like we do our own tough cell aviation grade wiring harness and computer. And so there's a few things, but the idea is that you can get everything affordably and you don't have problem with parts. So that's part of not changing the internals of the Honda engine. If you need something, no matter where you are, you can get it.
It's a worldwide distribution system. Yeah.
Yep. So like we're a lot of people are kind of struggling right now with lead times and parts and stuff like that. We're able to ship within 2 weeks and have everything out the door as a full kit for whatever you need.
So I call you today, I said I need an engine, and Dave got some special dispensation, it sounds like, but you can get me an engine in 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's not abnormal. In fact, many times we ship next day depending on what's going on. And
I don't think Lycoming or Continental could come anywhere close to that. I think Lycoming's almost a year out or something. It's pretty crazy right now.
yeah, so and then you wind up with a more affordable package overall. Like typically our entire kit, engine, all the way from the mount to the propeller that we offer is pricing wise is usually less than the engine alone for any other options out there. So we really take advantage of mass production in that way to be able to supply a very affordable product for people that can outperform.
Super. So we've seen it on a lot of Zeniths. How many other different aircraft types do you have them installed on?
We have about 1,200 engines worldwide, and we have a couple international distributors as well. So we have over 40 different firewall forward kits that we have. So pretty much everything on the experimental realm, from Zenith to Rands to Kitfox to Velocity to a little bit of everything out here. We've done more than once from many different models. So.
Anything? Is anybody running one on an RV?
Oh yeah, we have RV12s, RV9, RV7. We just started doing that as well, but we really are accustomed to just making a mount, all it takes to do something new is send us your firewall, as long as it fits what the plane needs as far as horsepower and weight.
Yeah.
Send us your firewall dimensions and an extra 2 weeks, and then you'll have a mount and everything you need for that as well.
Speaking of mounts, I'm looking at it, so it's not a bed mount like some cars. It's a more traditional airplane kind of mount on the backside.
Yeah, correct.
It makes it easier to make that the whole mount for the airplane, I guess.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah, cool. So, am I correct in saying just the gearbox is the main component that you guys add? You stay with the computer that comes with it?
No, we don't. We do our own computer. We obviously don't need everything that a car engine needs, so
Okay.
we change the harness we have, and he can elaborate more on that. That's one of the changes.
Okay.
But a gearbox and the R&D that goes into that and everything that involves making that reliable and everything that it needs to be, then that's one of the bigger components, which has a lot of benefits as well outside of being airborne.
So we were talking about the avgas versus MoGas. Obviously, they're different octane ratings. So, did you retain the anti-knock protection that these engines have built into them? Or the knock protection? I'm not sure what they call it.
Yeah, we do. Now we have port injected engines and direct injected engines. Now, for the direct injected engines, the immunity to knock is incredible. You can inject fuel early in the piston stroke, and it cools the inside of the engine and the engine's almost knock proof because of it. You can run a lot more ignition timing, a lot more boost if it's a turbocharged engine, and the engine can produce more power than what you would traditionally think that a 1.5 liter engine could. All engines have knock protection. They have a knock sensor. Like you were asking, like what do we really do if it's just like a stock engine from Honda? And as a designer, I'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to change everything, and it's all my creation and all that. But that's not true. We focus our efforts on what's important. So we designed the gearbox, designed the engine mounts, made the intake manifold work on the engines, do a little shaving down on the throttle body to make that work, a little lighter alternator. We do our own exhaust system. We figure out the cooling system. We figure out, how the engine's going to be mounted in all these different airplanes and what kind of offsets to the right or up or down or whatever. And we flight test every engine in every airplane, and we document everything. So, and then we do all the dyno testing, and then after all the dyno testing is done, then we take it to the air and we continue to fine-tune air-fuel mixture and ignition timing and all that. And we do all that with low-grade gasoline so that when you go from 87 octane to 89, you have that little buffer. So you want to use 89 octane or above. So we do all that, and yeah, there's a two-edged sword by telling people that, yeah, it's just a car engine with a gearbox, because essentially that's what it is. But if it was really easy to do what we do, you'd see a lot more car engines flying. So it's all in the details, like for instance, we would get a customer, can I get into your computer? Can I get my laptop and tweak it a little bit? It's like, no. We cannot let you into that, because that's where all the magic is. That's what makes it start, that's what makes it run, that's what makes it efficient, that's what makes it have the peak power that is allowable within a reason without destroying the engine. So yes, there's a lot to it, but at the same time, when you get the engine, you can buy every part in that engine from Honda.
What's the reduction ratio on this gearbox?
2.33 to 1.
So now the engine is rated at what kind of RPM? 7,000?
Well, it's in the car is rated at like 6,700,
Okay.
Which we never see. We don't even
Right.
get close. Yeah.
Yeah, so, okay, then you're going to reduce it down to, well, what's your drop RPM at cruise?
Well, we don't start from 6,700. That's in the car.
Yeah.
So we pretty much figure like, same as Rotax, like 5,700 RPM is our maximum. So that's 1,000 RPM lower than
Okay.
the red line in the car, which already has a little bit of cushion to it. And then, then you reduce it from there. So our optimum propeller RPM would be around 2,200 for efficient cruising.
That's a whole lot quieter than 2,700, so I'm getting a noise reduction also.
Yes, exactly.
Now, propellers. So you got your own propellers that you hang on them?
We work with Duke out of France,
Okay.
and we've learned that working with a propeller manufacturer has given us a lot of benefits because now they have already a very nice propeller, and then if we want to enhance our engine using that particular propeller, then we work with them, and we did. We had them develop a variable propeller system for their hub, and then we developed the actual mechanism that goes on our engine. So it's a matter of having then a hole in our gearbox throughout, we can put a shaft through the gearbox, and it's a very simple actuator that then pushes against the mechanism in the propeller hub and allows you to then turn the blades if you want either a variable propeller or a constant speed propeller. So rather than having brushes and a motor in the spinner, which kind of complicates things and puts weight out in the spinner, the propeller is completely simple, and then the actuating mechanism is on the side of the engine.
So you do have a constant speed prop available on which engine models? The biggest one here?
On all of them.
On all of them?
Yeah.
So is that capable of acrobatics? It can handle those kind of loads?
Well, it can. The limitation is more that our engine is not set up for that. Our engine is set up for, loops and rolls and barrel rolls and things like that, but it's not really designed to be upside down because
Well,
of the
positive G stuff.
Yeah. But the propeller itself, sure, because it's so lightweight, then you multiply that into like forces exerted on the propeller disc and everything. You can do aerobatics with it.
Okay,
because of it. Yeah.
that's good. Yeah, so because I know some electric props, you said it wasn't electric, it's mechanical. Some electric props, you really don't want to do those kind of loads that aerobatics puts on the prop. Is it possible to put a different prop on it other than what y'all?
Yeah, you can put any kind of prop you want on it. I would stay with lightweight,
Okay.
modern carbon fiber propellers.
Okay, sounds good. Trying to think of the next question here. Did you?
Well, I think one thing that is very important is in today's world, like you were saying, the whole thing about I don't think I could get an engine tomorrow by Lycoming, and I think and I was saying earlier about this thing about how every year we seem to be selling more and more engines and more people are accepting our engine, and that doesn't just come from the mechanical parts of the engine. It comes from Alyssa with the customer service that she offers to customers. And can she talk about that?
Definitely, I'd like to. And I want then Dave to talk about the support that you might have outside the company with other people that have adopted this engine into their airframe. If there's kind of a blog site or how you do that. I don't know if there is one or not, but let's let her listen to the company side.
Yeah, I guess, Jan works a lot in the shop. I do as well. We both wear many hats. However, I get to do a lot of the one-on-one with the customers from the beginning of their questions all the way up until the sale. And a lot of times until that installation starts coming in is the first time really Jan sometimes gets introduced to some of our customers. So I think a big part of that is really being available to your customers. That's a really important thing. We really do pick up the phone, answer the emails. You're gonna get responses right away, so you're not delaying your build. We're available on the weekends when people are actually working on their builds, so they're not, that 2-year project can become a little less because they can kind of keep moving forward. Outside of that, I just try my very best to treat people the way I would want to be treated, as cliche as that sounds, to the best of our ability. I think, and there's quite a few customers here in the stands too, and Dave has dealt with me more often than not. So he can obviously speak to the customer service, and I always like to be able to give people, I tell you, I can give you 50 names right now. Please talk with every single one of them. Ask them the hard questions, and they do. And that, I think that's really important to hear from customers and not just ourselves. You can kind of get what seems like debated material that we repeat over and over again, but when you really speak to other customers out there that are happy, that's what really sells your product and it takes care of them.
Well, you talked about the install process and support for that, but as reliable as anything is, you're always going to have some little problems in the field. So I'm on a trip, and I'm just kind of like Dave did. He's out there for 10 days. He's over a weekend. He breaks down, and of course the local mechanic's not going to know how to work on this thing. Hopefully the home builder knows a lot about it.
Well,
So what you're saying, it sounds like to me that I can get that support even on the weekends. I need to do something to get myself going again. I'm aircraft on ground.
yeah, I guess a prime example of that is there's been many circumstances where maybe somebody has a prop strike or something of that nature. They're out in the back country and they're like, how do I get home? Or something's going on. That same day they can give us a call and I can have a gearbox in the mail next day and they can be back up in the air. With standard stuff and ready to go. That the gearbox and the dampening system that is on this engine actually means if you have that prop strike, you're not having to actually really touch the engine. That dampener kind of takes the loads of a prop strike, and it kind of saves you a lot of heartache and a few dollar bills at the same time.
I'm glad you brought that up. I hadn't really thought of that, but that's unfortunately not an uncommon problem. Like the guy in my hangar had a prop strike, and his engine's out for who knows how long now. So you're saying all we got to do then is remove the gearbox and replace it, and
Precisely, yep. And a lot of times you're not even necessarily replacing it. We can get one to you if you need it right away, but you can just unbolt it, send it to us. 24 hours later, I'll have it back in the mail. And typically there's absolutely nothing wrong with the gearbox. Maybe you changed a bearing or two, but you replace that torsion dampener that took the loads, that's $200. You replace your centering bushing, which is $25. And you bolt the gearbox back on.
wow. Can you tell us maybe a little bit more about the design of the gearbox? Because that's a unique feature. You don't really have any design in the engine, because I wanted to say Boeing. Honda did that for you. Tell us about, because that's a unique, you designed the gearbox, right?
Yes, I did. And
So tell us how that worked.
I'm going to talk about the gearbox. I'm going to say one tiny little thing first about, like you were saying, if you are out, you are a home builder and you're out in the field, and how do you get help? And that's an illusion that many people have, that in order to get help, I have to have a Lycoming or a Rotax or something that everybody supposedly can work on. Now, the reality of that is that the thing about the Lycoming and every FBO has every part in stock and all that, that's long gone. And there isn't an aircraft mechanic on duty on the weekend everywhere, okay? You're more likely to land at an airport where there's nobody around. So who can then, and we've seen even in Florida where we have the biggest Rotax dealer in the world, people folding up their airplanes and trucking it to where they are because there's nobody at that particular airport that can work on that particular engine. Now, our engine is a car engine, okay? Any auto mechanic anywhere or anyone that's worked on any engine at all can work on that engine, including the builder, him or herself, because it is a sophisticated engine, but it's also very simple. There's 4 coils, there's a few sensors, it's a pretty simple deal. So to change the starter, I'm not saying you should necessarily get a Chinese-made starter from AutoZone, but you can to get home. Then you can replace it with a genuine Honda one later. So you can get parts in every town, in every city, in every place in this country for that engine. So
That's a great point. So it makes me think, you talked about changing the computer a little bit with your own code. Can an auto mechanic plug in and do all the code reading? Does it record everything like it does in a car?
it's a little different than that, but yes, we do have a recorder that you can plug into a connector, and it will record your flight.
So a car mechanic, could he read it and get a fault analysis of any sort?
It does have OBD2 capability. We haven't really used that very much because we haven't had any issues where it's something to do with the wiring or the engine or something like that. But if that ever came up, yes, you could use OBD2 and read code like you're saying. Yes.
Cool. At least my oxygen sensor is not going to go out when I get a batch of bad gas.
Yeah, and it doesn't have an oxygen sensor.
Yeah, that's why I'm saying that. That's always the problem when that silly little orange light comes on my instrument panel.
Now about the gearbox, that the thing about gearbox is, I've been doing this for 30 years, and when I first started, of course, there was no way you could start a company like that ordering 5,000 pieces of forged steel that's been ground into shapes that will make a gearbox. So you do the best you can. You start out with a belt drive, and you try that for a while, and then you figure out, well, that's kind of good, but it seems like very easy. You got a belt drive, and you can see it, and how can go wrong and all that, until you realize that that belt drive is bolted to a hot engine, and you're side loading the crankshaft, and you've got greased bearings with no oil, so they're going to be like throwing grease everywhere, and the whole thing becomes like a toy. You can't really like jump in it and go across the country like Dave did. So eventually you're going to need a gearbox. So then as the years go by, you still can't afford all that stuff, so you take a transfer case, or you find something in the automotive industry where you can get the gears and modify them and make some kind of a gearbox. And then eventually you realize that, or you just take a chance with everything you own, and you spend $200,000-$300,000 on 10,000 pieces of purposely made gears. They're forged, they're ground, they have the proper spline where they need a spline. You don't have to cut anything off. They have the proper size bearings that can go onto this gear, and it becomes a custom gearbox for your engine. It's designed for that. It has the right ratio. Everything is perfect, and that's where we're at. We order gears that are forged by 8,000 series steel. We get 10,000 pieces at a time, prop hubs, gears, drive couplings, and now you have something that's real, and that's where we're at right now.
Cool. That's a great story. The middle version you said was just an automotive transfer case?
Started with a Suzuki transfer case, and then eventually ended up with some a different transfer case from a Nissan. The first one was basically just use the whole transfer case, lock it into the proper gear you wanted, and put a front plate and a prop hub. And then that involved into just using the gear from a larger car and machining your own housing, and then eventually into this where everything inside that gearbox is custom made for that.
Reminds me of Johnny Cash with his 50, 51, 52 car with an adapter kit. So we've gone to no need for the adapter kit. We got the full housing for us. Technically, so Alyssa was mentioning how mechanically it works. He said the bottom there coming off the crankshaft is a
Yeah, what she's saying is, and what everybody that's researched is, and their biggest worry is, well, can you bolt a gearbox to an inline 4-cylinder engine and not have the cylinders? Obviously a turbine engine is very smooth, but a combustion engine makes its power through pulses. There's one cylinder firing at any one time. So this bang, 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 is that going to ruin the gearbox? And so you have to develop the proper torsion dampening system. And what we use is it's kind of a rubber coupling with like Kevlar rope and stuff in it. It's a commercially available product that we've modified and are able to use between the flywheel and the gearbox, and it's right out in the open. You can inspect it very easily. You can always, it's never been an issue. It's been a very, very reliable system. Now you look at that gearbox.